Everybody, welcome to our April 6th webinar. This one is sponsored by Duolingo. So today we're going to learn a lot about our current trends in international recruitment and admissions and how the Duolingo test can be used by our graduate programs. I know we're getting a lot more questions over the last few months about Duolingo. So I, for one, was pretty excited that I get to sit in on this so I can bring it back to our department. So hopefully you all will take away some tips too. I have a few housekeeping items to remind everybody about as you're still getting logged in. First of all, my name is Tracy Collum. I'm the Associate Dean for the Graduate School at Idaho State University in Southeast Idaho. And today we woke up to 5 inches of snow, April 6th, and 5 inches of snow. So hopefully where you're at is a little bit warmer and you're enjoying some fresh flowers growing and probably spring allergies as well. So just had to say that we have the snow out in Idaho. If you do miss it, you can surely come visit. Right now with NAGAP, we have a lot of webinars coming up this month. So if you have not had a chance to go to the NAGAP webinar page, the next few that you will have after today, next Tuesday, we have our GEM Summit Know Before You Go, which will have a little bit of a twist this year. Normally the Know Before You Go information is about when we are in person, but there are some tips and tricks for our virtual event. So you may want to attend that. It will be recorded so you can watch it at your own leisure before the actual GEM Summit begins. So keep that in mind. Make sure you try to check that out before so you can navigate the GEM Summit before you get logged in. The other webinars coming up this month are continuing the conversation on modeling for successful graduate enrollment in 2021 and beyond. And that'll be done by our leadership team at NAGAP. And then also in the next few weeks right after Summit, we will have another webinar titled Inefficiency is Not an Option. So we will have that one too. So if you want to RSVP to any of those, make sure you get the links, be sure to do so. And while you're still getting logged in, I would love a show of hands of who is going to the summit in a few weeks, the virtual summit. So if you can go raise your hand, I'd love to see. We have 17 here so far. Are all 17 going? Got a full house yet? Not quite. So if you still are trying to register, make sure you go check those things out too. So I'll see you all there as well. So to get started with today's webinar, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. If you have questions throughout today's webinar, please post them in the Q&A area. And then at the end of the webinar, our representatives will be able to respond to those questions. If you use the chat, please try to chat to the person you are asking the question of, but if you would like it to be a more open question, please send it to the Q&A area so that way we can get that quickly for all of you. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Duolingo, and to introduce them to start with, we have Ryan Munson, who is the Graduate Engagement Manager at Duolingo. He's been in GEM or enrollment management for a few decades, he says. Few decades, right? And then we also have Marivi Walker, who's the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions at Florida Tech. So I'm going to turn it over to these two. And if you have questions, again, make sure you put them in that Q&A box at the bottom. And Ryan, are you starting us off?
I am.
Great.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tracy. I am just south of Tracy in Utah. Don't let the Vikings football fool you. I also woke up to snow, so jealous of everyone else that doesn't have to deal with that this morning. But as Tracy had said, yes, I'm Ryan Munson. I've been with Duolingo since we launched the exam about 5 years ago. But my background is in international admissions. I work for some small schools here in Utah for the past, gosh, it's almost been 20 years now in this world, and absolutely love it. But for the last 5, been with Duolingo, really been exciting to build this exam and really see it grow. And that's what we're going to talk to everyone about today. And I've got the pleasure of having my good friend Marivi with me from Florida Tech, and she is going to talk about their experience with our exam as far as implementation went and what they've seen with scoring and what they've seen with students at the graduate level. So excited to hear from her, but we're going to bring her on a little bit later. So let's just dive right in, because I know we're a little bit on a time crunch, so I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So you can see the agenda here. We're going to talk a little bit about international education, where we were during the pandemic and continue to be in that pandemic into 2021. We'll talk about the English test itself, the background, where it came from, how we built that, of course, some research and security. We're not going to dive into a ton of details within research and security. We're really going to just highlight those areas. We have webinars that live on our website that you can go to and download and research, look through. We actually had a really big research roundtable last week. And so that lives online as well if you want to really dive into the research team and who they are and what they've been doing over the last 5 years. Then we're going to talk about a little bit use and practice, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So let's just jump right in. So international education 2021, what we're hearing, what we're seeing. We are seeing, visas coming back, which is really exciting. I know at the beginning of this time last year, we saw a lot of visa cancellations due to the pandemic, travel restrictions, everyone kind of in that panic mode. What are we going to do with applicant completions? What are we going to do with at the graduate level of getting these students where they need to be? And so we're a part of that as well. And we were kind of right place, right time with our exam, since we are an online exam. So, what did we see over the past year? We saw immense growth. We saw, plus 2,000 institutions asking to accept our test. And so they would come to us and say, we'd really like to, be able to use this in the admissions process. We're happy to do so. It's completely free. So we saw huge growth there. Also saw year-to-date growth with students actually taking the test throughout the world. I think probably the proudest thing that we saw is we saw 177 different countries represented this last year, which is super exciting for us to see all those different students throughout the world being able to access the test. So how did we respond to this? Obviously, being online, there's unlimited seats. There is no trying to set an interview. There's no reserving a seat. You just need to sit down, take the test 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we were definitely in the right place to be able to help those students out. Round the clock support, something I'm also very proud of, is we do have 24 hours, 7 days a week support for both students and institutions. Everything lives online. You can see there, our Mandarin speakers take over during China daytime hours. They also speak Cantonese. At heart, Duolingo is a language company, so we speak and can write up to 37 different languages, or actually I think it's quite a bit more than that, but we teach 37 different languages. So we really are to be able to help anyone that needs help in their native language. And then 100% uptime. What does that mean? We've never fallen off. We've never gone dark. We were able to be up 100% of the time throughout this entire year. We obviously strive for that being an online exam. So we're really proud of that fact as well. Next slide is going to talk about the Duolingo background. Who are we? What do we do at heart? Really, it's almost been 9 years that we started, our Duolingo started. And again, over 30 distinct languages that we teach completely for free. 300 million users around the world. Many of you, I'm sure, are either practicing language or learning a language with Duolingo right now. I'm on a 289-day German streak to keep my German up and going. So at heart, we're a tech and language company. And so very, like I said before, just adapt to be able to create an English exam, since what we do is languages. So who's behind that? Luis Von Ahn is one of our founders. We actually have two. We bring up Luis because he really ties to the reason we came up with this exam. He is a Guatemalan and did his undergrad and master's and PhD work here in the United States. Obviously had to take an English exam to be able to attend school here in the United States, and didn't have the best time doing so. And so, our mission is access and being able to bring that education to the world, and access is a big piece of that. And so he was a big push to say, let's change this game. Let's make it easier for the student institution to be able to prove that you speak a language. A little bit behind Luis, though, if you've ever had to buy a concert ticket online or really do anything and you had to fill out those squiggly letters, you can blame Luis. Luis invented CAPTCHA and reCAPTCHA. Those are those, hey, I'm not a robot type things that you have to fill in. So if you ever want to get mad at someone, Luis is your problem there. He sold both those companies to Google and then created Duolingo shortly thereafter. Luis has a great TED Talk. So if you just research Luis Von Ahn, find his TED Talk. It's actually really inspiring to see where he's come from and what he's been able to do throughout his career. So let's dive into the test overview. So access by far and away is our #1 goal. Want to be able to access the entire world, no matter where a student is, to be able to prove that they speak English. So again, no test centers, no appointments. It's a $49 US fee across the board, no matter what country you're in. There's no change as far as cost goes, and except for, of course, dealing with different currencies. But we're a flat fee, $49 fee. There's no extra cost. There's no extra fees. That gets you unlimited access to the test, and then unlimited shares. So you can share it with any institution that's accepting the exam. Speaking of accessibility, I had mentioned 177 different countries represented and students taking the exam within those countries. So it's something we're super proud of this past year. Comprehensive, we knew if we created a test, we'd have to be able to test those areas that we've been testing for, or everyone's been testing for well over 50 years, reading, listening, writing, and speaking. We do it a little bit differently. We have integrated subscores, which we'll touch on a bit here today. But we also have a writing sample and a video interview of the student all within the score report. So it's a pretty robust overall score of what you're seeing for the student and their abilities. Fast. We wanted something that could be extremely fast, whether that be turnaround time for the test, whether that be sending it to the institution. I know when I needed a test to be able to prove someone's English ability, I had sometimes to wait up to a month, sometimes longer, depending on what the situation was. So we wanted something that was to be able to be done in 48 hours. So that is our turnaround time for the student. Secure. This is by far and away the #1 thing I get asked on a daily basis is, how do you keep this test secure, since we're an online test the student can take from home? So being a tech and language company, we're pretty nimble and we have some pretty tight security protocols, which I'm going to dive into some of those details here today. But it's something that we're focused on day in and day out. It's never going to be something that we're not focused on, because it's so vitally important to keep this test secure and those test results accurate. Speaking of accuracy, we have to have a test that's accurate, because if we have a test that's not, there's no point in having a test at all. And so we did a lot of research behind this, and before we actually released to the public, we want to make sure we had a reliable test that was reliable no matter how many times you took this exam. And then finally, a new model, different format. So we're going to dive into some more details about what that means, but really we're an adaptive test and a machine learning test. So it's learning as you go through the exam on your ability and finding your average very quickly, and then testing you within that average. This cuts back all the time that's spent, testing you at every single level multiple times to come up with an average that most traditional English exams do. This cuts that time away back to just under an hour, where we can find your average and then test you within that average. So highly predictive of your English skills. We're really proud of our model, but we'll dive into details here a little bit later on. So something that we also see a lot is, since we built this test from the ground up, people think we came up with the question types ourselves, and that's actually not true. We actually came up with the question types from research that's been done behind each question type itself. And so what you can see here on the screen is a few of our different formats, where the research came from, who the authors of that research are, and why we chose those. Actually lives online as well. And the link will be within this presentation that everyone will be shared. So you actually can see our research page, dive into who these authors are, why we chose these question types, why they're important to an adaptive exam. But we wanted to make sure and make it very clear that we didn't come up with these on our own. These are vetted questions that really are producing the skills that we need to be able to test for each student. And what you're seeing below is just a few different samples. So just start here on the left. That is a writing sample. You have 3 to 5 minutes to write about a topic. So you see a question, you have to write about that. The one right there directly in the middle is speak to 1 to 3 minutes on a topic below. So the student will choose the topic and then talk about that for 1 to 3 minutes. And then on the far right is called the C test. And the C test has a full complete sentence at the beginning and at the end of a paragraph, and then everything within that paragraph is broken. The student will have to fill out what's going on with that paragraph. The reason that we wanted to show you that is it's pretty important to know that we want as much data per question that we can get, that we can grade, and that we can adapt. So you're never going to see true false questions. You're never going to see A, B, C, or D questions within our exam. They're always going to be really rich within data and grading points that we can grade. So it's never a yes, no, right or wrong question. It's going to be something like you see here on the C test, where you may get some of it right, some of it wrong, but each one of those data points we can grade. So we'll talk about some research and security. So we knew when we built the test, we needed to have correlation and concordance with both, TOEFL and IELTS that are the dominant tests that have been around for quite some time. So what you're seeing on this plot chart here below, you can see the correlation between TOEFL and IELTS here at the top. with the end value, or how many tests were actually graded, of 1,100 tests. That's a 0.73. Between Duolingo and IELTS, we're a 0.78 with 991 tests, and between Duolingo and TOEFL, we're a 0.77 at 2,300 tests. What that's showing you is the correlation charts that we came up with, and the correlation in itself is actually higher with our exams, with both those two different exams, than they are with each other. Again, this is something that is constantly being tested and vetted as we get more and more students taking both tests. And so we are always updating our concordance tables, but we knew before we released this that this had to be done. What you're seeing at the bottom there, englishtest.duolingo.com/scores, actually dives into more of this data, dives into the concordance table themselves and things of that nature. So feel free to see that as well. Talking about scale and concordance, you can see that we map to the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference. This is pretty much a general, as everyone probably here is familiar with, is how to evaluate some language. Starting at A1, going all the way to C2. Our scale starts at 10 and goes to 160. So you can see on the far right there how we compare to TOEFL. So if you have a Duolingo scale over 100, that's going to be anywhere from a 74 to a 79 on a TOEFL exam. Again, full charts live online. So how do we score and how do we evaluate? I want to talk a little bit about reading and writing and how we do that. So we do have ESL experts that we employ, but we couldn't just have a human rater. And what I mean by that is, if I go to any institution within the United States or really throughout the world, and I ask an English professor to grade an essay, they're going to have a way they grade that essay. If I take that exact same essay and go to a different institution, that English professor may have a very different opinion on how to grade that essay. It's going to be fairly similar, but it's going to be different in certain ways. And so how do we evaluate that on a fair and equal value across the board with any international student? So we do a combination of human raters and machine learning. So with the machine learning, it's going to be non-biased every single time. It's going to come up with the same score no matter who you are, where you're from, what language you speak, what your accent is. It's going to be fair and biased through and through. And then the human raters can come in and really vet through some English skills to make sure that the machine learning score is what it should be. And that, it's not taking off points for, maybe saying a British English word or an Australian English word over, an Oxford English word. So there's a lot of differences there. So we evaluate each student with both human and machine learning. So we knew that we have to have peer-reviewed publications and research. Unfortunately, those take time, as we all know. Research takes time. So we do have a few that are in the works now. And of course, we actually just had one come out in 2020. Again, on the next screen, you're going to see a link to our research page where everything lives. So any research that's been done or published, whether it's been by us or peer-reviewed, is downloadable, and you actually can search through all that research and find out who our research team is and things of that nature. So moving right into that, one of the things we want to make sure is our test is not a bias test. Again, we want to be fair and equal across no matter who that student is. And so this research paper that came out proved that no, we're not a bias test, which we're super happy to have. Again, you can download this and actually dive into all the research completely for free at englishtest.duolingo.com/research. So how do we administer this test? This brings up a few different things. One, being a computer adaptive test, you don't see questions come up again and again. You won't get the same question twice. That is on purpose. That is for security. That is for data mining. So students can't come in and just memorize questions and answers and then regurgitate that back to get a higher score. We want every single exam to be unique and make sure that every single exam is to the level that it should be and not repeating question types. So we have a very large item pool that we draw from. We actually monitor to make sure that each question type is not exposed too many times. If it is exposed too many times, we actually will retire that question and then put in a new question that has not been exposed. So speaking to that, as you can go through the entire exam, we are going to benchmark you at the beginning to see where your levels really are. So as you get a question right, of course, that test will get much harder. As you get a question wrong, it'll get easier. Once we benchmark that student anywhere from 3 to 7 questions, it's usually around 6 questions, then we have a good place to start the actual exam as far as diving into what their overall average should be within all the sub-scoring. And so that is the adaptive model. That's how it's delivered. That's how we can keep our question types from coming up again and again and making each test unique to the user. So again, I talked about exposure rate. So we have a really low exposure rate that's, I think it's the lowest within the market of testing, which we're super proud of and want to keep that way. If you take the test, like I said, if I took it right now and I took it immediately after, I would get completely different questions. And so we want to keep it that way as we move forward and make sure our question types are always changing and not being exposed. So if for some reason I was able to access the test, and what I mean by that is we do lock out users from taking the test over and over again. If I were to take it today and I got my score back, I can immediately take it again. But as soon as I take it that second time, I'm locked out for 30 days. So once that lockout period is over, then I can access the test again and take it again to try to get a better score. But what that means is it take about 41 years before I ever saw the same question twice. So again, keeping the test secure, vitally important to our exam, and making sure that test items are not exposed, also extremely important. So let's talk about certification process and what that means and how we keep this secure and what our security team is really doing. We talked a little bit about human rating and machine learning, or machine grading, excuse me. So let's walk through that student journey together. The test will upload, I'll finish my exam. It then goes through an AI review. What is that AI doing during that review? They're looking at all kinds of things. It's looking at your ID to match your face using biometrics. It's flagging anything it sees that's funny within the camera or microphone. Give you a great example. Obviously, I'm in with my home office. If something were to come into the back frame, whether it be my wife or my dog or my children, that's going to flag it saying someone's in the room. If my eyes are all over the place during the test, it's going to flag things like that. And so it'll flag anything it sees as suspicious. And then our human raters are going to come in after that. So we have 3 rounds of human proctoring. First round is going to look at all those AI flags and go through the entire test to say, yep, that's definitely someone else in the room or things of that nature. Once they go through that test, they'll get passed on to the second round of proctoring. And as long as Proctor 1 and Proctor 2 agree completely, that test can then be certified. Now, if there is a discrepancy between Proctor 1 and Proctor 2, it'll actually go to a third human proctor who'll make that final decision on whether or not to certify the exam. Once it's been certified, an email is sent to the student. They are then free to share with all 3,500 institutions that are accepting our exam. And again, there's no extra fee for them to share across the board. So if they have a top 10 list, they actually can share to all 10. Now, if it's not certified, there's a few different processes a student can do. They can reach out to our support, again, 24 hours a day to see what's going on with their exam. Or if they have questions as far as why it wasn't certified, they can appeal any decision that we've made. So if they don't feel like that was a decision that should have been made, they can appeal that and work with our security team through that. Or if they have, let's say their internet drops, because this is an issue that we had to look at by providing an internet test. And that's one of the reasons we needed a test that would only last about an hour. Because if you look across the world, if you can keep internet for about an hour, you can finish our test. And really, other than certain places throughout the world, internet can last for about an hour before you start to see really big drops in certain places. So that being said, is let's say their internet drops out mid-test, then they would have to be able, they're going to have to take the test again. Unfortunately, they can't start where they left off. That's again due to security, but they won't have to pay again. They'll actually get a credit on their account to restart whenever they're ready. Now, if they get to the uploading phase, so let's say they finished the full exam and they're uploading their results, and then their test drops out or their internet drops out, they actually can go back to the uploading phase and finish the upload. They don't have to retest, but they actually can work through our customer support and security teams to get those credits going, or if they have questions even during their exam, they can reach those folks. So I talked a little bit about computer vision and biometrics. Again, the AI is very strong that we use. I can't go through everything that we do and everything that we track, but I can tell you it's very robust, and the AI is in complete control of that exam during the full exam. So I did want to talk about, some of the, I used to proctor some tests for the college that I work for, and I think it just brings it into good perspective as far as not having those proctoring centers. So if I brought in a class of 25, I have one shot to proctor all 25 students for, however long that exam lasts. I don't get to see it again. I get one and done. And if they, gain an advantage somehow and I missed it, then I missed it. And that's why you see, invalidated tests months after the fact. By doing the process that we employ, by looking at the video and recording and the audio recording after the fact, we're at a 2-to-1 ratio or even 3-to-1, depending on how many human proctors are looking at that exam. But again, we can go back and rewind at any point during the exam. So if there's something fishy, we can look at it 100 times before we make a decision. So I always think that just brings a good perspective. It's not just a one and done. We actually have that forever. We can look at it as many times as needed. All right, that is my time. So I'm going to turn it over to Marivi just for a little bit to talk about Florida Tech's journey. So Marivi, if you want to jump on here, I will mute myself.
Okay, that was fascinating, Ryan. And thank you very much for joining all of us. And I must say that I am just the biggest fan of Duolingo. I'll tell you a little bit about our story at Florida Tech. For those of you who are not familiar with the university, we are located in Melbourne, Florida, and we're a very international university. We've, about 30% of our population, be it undergrad and grad, come from overseas. So when Duolingo first came about, we heard about it. I was an undergrad at the time, and we brought it to the attention of the English department, and they kind of looked at us a little cross-eyed, and they said, Duolingo, what's that? That can't be real, whatever. And so we knew that it was really a very, very cool tool, something that was really going to help us in admissions. And it was just, continuously trying to get them to kind of pay attention to it. Well, what changed everything is when I got to go to Pittsburgh and I saw, everything in motion. I went to visit and spent 2 days at the offices, and really getting to understand, like Ryan said, the way that they tested, the security behind the scenes, the employees, the people that they brought on board, to kind of run everything. To me, it was just an incredible product. And I said, we have to use this. Came back to Florida Tech and really kind of brought all of this back-end information to the Department of English. And they said, okay, let's try it. And so initially it was just for our College of Business, and they let us test it out with that. Within the College of Business that year, it was probably summer right before the 2019-2020 cycle. I had a lot of athletes who were trying to get on board, did not have English proficiency. So we had them take the test first, and they took the test. What was really wonderful about that is because many of them were rowers, and they were either in European conferences or national championships, and they didn't really have time to go to a testing center, sign up, this, that, and the other. And I said, listen, if you have a laptop, you can, you have internet connection, you can sit on your boat for an hour. I'm just kidding. And you can take the test. That's all I need. And I think they really didn't take us very seriously, because when we explained to them how inexpensive really the test is, and how you can take it, twice in a month, and how we got the results so quickly, they said, this just can't be real. But it was, and it was great. And luckily, the students got the scores back to us. They were passing scores, and they enrolled. And so then we kind of watched those students to see how they did in the classroom. No difference from those who had provided other English language proficiency results. So then, of course, took it to our flagship college, which is really the College of Engineering and Science. And again, kind of explained to them all the behind the scenes and this, that, and the other. And you can see what happened from 18 score received in 2019 to 2020, all the way to 890. It was amazing, and it made our life so much easier. So for us, it really has been the go-to exam, the go-to test. Whenever a student, contacts me and says this, that, and the other, and says, I cannot start my I-20 process, I haven't taken my English language proficiency, I'm like, don't worry about it. This is easy. I can get you all set up. It won't take you hardly any time at all. You can sign up tomorrow, you can take the test the day after, and we'll get your results in a couple of days, and then you're good to go, and we can start the I-20 process. And so that is how we did it in undergrad. Coming into graduates and the graduate program, I kind of started the same type of process, which was kind of starting it off small again within our College of Business and College of Aeronautics, and then moving it on to the College of Engineering and Science. Right now, I will tell you, I know right now it says there that we've only received 409 test results for the 2021-2022, but that was up until about a month ago. I can tell you that we received a lot more. It's really something that the students find to be extremely easy. They'll email me back and say, wow, that was great. And like I said, we have watched the students in the classrooms. I've spoken to the professors, spoken to the departments, and they're perfectly fine with the English proficiency of students coming in with DET versus the ones who come in with IELTS or TOEFL or whatnot. So for me, it's been a godsend. I will 100% always promote the program, and I think it's great. It's fascinating, and if you ever have a chance to really get to know the company and the people behind it, it's just an incredible, incredible company. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Marivi. I really appreciate it. She had noted that she got to travel to Pittsburgh to meet the entire staff, and that's something that we'd love to do. Obviously, COVID changed that and made everything go virtual. We are going to host a few virtual grad open houses in May. Watch your email for those. Those will be first come, first serve. They'll fill fairly quickly because we can only have a limited amount, even though it's virtual, because we want to make sure that everyone kind of has that intimate experience as if you were in Pittsburgh. That being said, come fall of this year, we hope to be able to open those doors again to have everyone back in Pittsburgh. So definitely look for some things this year, most definitely next year in 2022. But grad specific open houses will be this May. So check your email for those. But again, you do get access to all the folks that, of course, are now all working remotely. Our offices are still closed. They will be probably until the fall. So all of our research team, our security team, everyone is working remotely. We have a few that have to work obviously within the building itself, but it is on pretty much lockdown during COVID. So let's go and talk a few more slides about how we can look at dashboards and get you started. So just really quickly, if you are interested in receiving results, whether that be for, forever, whether that be for just a department, it is all completely free. You can go to this link and fill out the dashboard request form, or you can actually just shoot me an email. I'm happy to set you up. If you use Slate or any kind of CRM that is integratable, we have an open API, meaning we actually can send those results right to your CRM system, so you don't actually have to log into a dashboard. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So it's actually extremely easy to get started. Let's show you what a dashboard looks like. So the dashboard is pretty simplistic in itself. I'm hoping you can see my mouse move around here, but what you'll see is the name, the date the test was taken, when it was sent to you, their overall score. You have a link for the interview, which is going to host their writing sample and their video interview, and then their certificate, which is going to show all you their sub-scoring, their overall score, give you much more indication of what those levels are. You see a little drop down here. When you do that, you'll see this box down here, which is an open box to where anyone can keep notes. So let's say at the grad level, we usually have a lot of faculty feedback. So if you give them access, they can put their notes in. Those notes are automatically saved, so everyone can see what they're saying about that applicant. Again, you can see their date of birth and their email and a picture of the student all within the dashboard. And then let's look at some interview responses. So you can see the video interview question that was asked. What you would see on the right-hand side is the video response of that student answering that question. You tab over, it'll have an essay question and of course their response there as well. One note I did want to talk about within the video interview and the essay itself, the ones that the institutions see are ungraded. What that means is during the exam, the student is going to have a graded essay and a graded speaking interview. They're also going to have 2 ungraded questions, and the student knows when they're not being graded. We decided to send the ungraded versions to all of our programs that are accepting our tests for 2 reasons. One is security. The graded questions we really need to keep tight to our chest, as each question is vetted to make sure it's not biased, to make sure it's not exposed too many times. We have to keep those really close to our chest and make sure they're not exposed. And then 2, students tend to open up a bit more when they know that there's no pressure on that question. So to give you a quick example, if I'm asked the question in a video interview, what is my favorite thing to do in my leisure time? I might just say hiking and leave it at that, because I know that's an answer, that's a correct answer, and I really don't want to embellish and embarrass myself if I think my English skills aren't that great. Now, when I'm not being graded, I'm hoping, and the hope is that the student will then elaborate a little bit more since they know the institution is seeing it, but they're not being graded. And so that's what you're going to see in your dashboard is an ungraded essay and an ungraded video interview. You're free to look at that and grade it if you'd like, but it really does help those professors look at those students and say, okay, I feel comfortable if we push them along in the applicant process. Start receiving results. Again, the link there. I set those dashboards up within the day. It's actually within a few minutes. Again, it's all very easy and simplistic. We do want to let you know that you do get a getting started guide that walks you through everything, email templates, social media assets if you need them. And of course, I think Marivi can talk a little bit more about those, but everything is completely free for the institutions. So that being said, a huge thank you. I know we're all getting pretty tired of Zoom meetings. I know that it's been well over a year that I've been on these cameras, so I really appreciate everyone's time. I hope that we were able to answer some questions today to give you that overview of the test itself. I do want to give you a couple different email addresses. Of course, mine is very simplistic. It's just ryan@duolingo.com. Feel free to email me any questions. I manage all of our graduate programs here in North America. And then any research questions, if you do have specific research questions, please send it to that email you see there below. That will go right to our research team who will be able to answer that much quicker than I would. And then of course, there'll be Marivi's email there as well. But I think we'll open the floor. We have plenty of time for questions. So I think Tracy, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I think the data you provided, Ryan, I know that answered a lot of my questions, just basic pieces. So thank you for providing that as well. We do have several questions already posted. So if anybody else has additional questions, feel free to post them as we have a good amount of time to be able to finish those questions out. So the first question I'll give you all is regarding security. So Ryan, do you have a sense of how many of your questions are posted by former test takers into databases or Reddit or other online forums?
Yeah, really good question. So we do scrape the internet each and every day for questions that are being exposed. That is a part of our overall exposure rate. So again, if there's a question that's been put on a site like Reddit where millions of eyes could have eyes on it, we're just going to retire that question automatically. So we do scrub the internet on a daily basis for those, but really good question.
Yeah, good deal. What is your minimum score requirement? And that might go back to your sheet there where you had the comparisons. I'm not sure.
So it depends. And I think Marivi, this will probably be, I think, one for you.
So we require 100, and we consider that equivalent kind of to the 79 of the IBT. Now for the graduate school, for GSAs, we actually do require them to be at a 120, just if they're going to be a teaching assistant, but 100 has worked beautifully for us.
And that actually answers one of the other questions I think that came up, but others may have numbers that they like to see. So we have someone who require a higher minimum score for IELTS and TOEFL subscores for teaching assistants. And what is your recommendation for assigning higher Duolingo minimum subscores or even overall to determine TA eligibility? Do you see a variance in that, or even what you require at Florida Tech?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure about the sub scores. I just know that we had it at 110 and they decided to raise it to 120 for specifically for the TAs, not so much for the research assistants. They looked at the concordance tables and that's just kind of how they felt comfortable. I can get further information for the person who asked the question from the English department and get that data to them if they want, but that's what I know.
Ryan, did you have anything to add on that one?
I was just going to say, if the institution is, requiring a higher score or a higher sub score for other exams, you probably want to do the same for ours because they are, those concordance charts do exist. They don't exist on the sub scoring side. And the reason that is we take a combination of writing and speaking. We have integrated sub scores. So it's not just writing by itself or speaking by itself. They're integrated. So there's no concordance because they don't integrate their sub scores. But if you're bumping that number up, by all means, you can always bump it up for a cycle and then say, okay, we need to bring this back a little. It's one of those things that you can constantly change and do what's right for your institution.
Right.
So another question for maybe both of you is, do you have performance data for students who have taken the test and scored in various ranges? basically how solid are the benchmarks for good scores?
Maybe I'll go first, just what I'm seeing in general at the grad level. What's been really encouraging is at the really high levels of English. So we're talking 100 to 120 to even for some schools 140. The benchmarks are extremely good. So those students are able to come into the grad level courses, been able to do everything that they've been required to do. So I'm very confident in our upper scoring. On the undergrad side, I think maybe Marivi, you could speak to that a little bit more, since I'm not so.
Yeah, no, we had started actually at 90 at the undergrad, raised it to 100. And for those of you who don't know, we are a purely STEM university. So students who come here get thrown right into their engineering degree. So we have absolutely not seen any issues whatsoever as far as students not being able to keep up because of their English language abilities for those who came in at 100. At 90, we felt that we were a little low. We kind of looked at that for about a semester. We saw some flippy floppy, and then we decided to go up to the 100, but it's been fine. And like I said, we've kept those same numbers at the graduate level, and it's definitely worked fine, except that we have increased it for the GSAs. So.
Great. And then Ryan, for the Slate integration, should they contact you or the Duolingo regional manager in their area?
Oh no, you can if it's graduate, please contact me, because it's going to come back to me anyway. If it's not for graduate, by all means, reach out to that regional manager, because the undergrad side has quite a few. But any graduate, just send it to me. Slate integration it's really is plug and play.
Yeah.
You put in the API, you put in the URL, and you're done. So
yes.
Yeah, happy to help you.
Yeah. I can say that. I remember when we first brought it on, the Slate people were like, oh my God, this is going to be such a nightmare. And they just came back and they said, that was it. I'm like, that was it. I mean, it was that easy.
Great. All right. Anybody else have any questions for our Duolingo panelists today?
Make it easy.
Right. Well, you guys provided a lot of information on those slides and some, I think, comparison charts that I think really helped answer some of the questions we have. And you said a lot of that was already on the website, and I know I started scrolling down through them too. So I know we can find that. So at this point, if there are no more questions, I just want to remind everybody that this has been recorded. You can find it on the NAGAP website. You do not have to be a member in order to find this particular webinar, but if you are interested in NAGAP membership, you can also find that information on our website, on the nagap.org website, so that way you can have access to more webinars that we offer every month. So Ryan, do you have any last words?
Parting words of wisdom, probably not, but I will say that I will be at the NAGAP Summit. We will have a booth. It'll just be me. We are going to try and send an email out before that, so you can reserve your time, so you're not, talking over someone else that's in the same booth, in the virtual booth. So we'll look for that email at the end of this month, but I'll definitely be there.
Great. So we will see you then. All right, everybody. This was really great. We've got some comments coming through. So Ryan, Mary, you can review those as well. Just some really helpful information. So thank you both for being here, and thanks to Duolingo for this webinar. And we have questions, I think we will all be able to contact you there. So
Awesome.
Happy Tuesday, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.